At first glance, the sun has set on the era of psychiatric reform. The anti-psychiatry movements of the 1960s, protests led by enigmatic thought leaders that challenged the institutionalization and medicalization of people experiencing mental health crises, devolved into a topic for internet forums and Scientology circles by the early 2000s, dismissed by medical professionals and the public as reductionist and radical. In the modern era, the growing popularity of the fight against the mental health epidemic has released appeals for more psychiatrists, more therapists, and more psychologists. Such summons echo from popular news sources to medical schools, placing these mental health professionals as potential saviors against increasing rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide worldwide. But these calls for help obscure a far more dangerous reality. Psychiatry is still broken. For as long as I can remember, I've wanted to be a psychiatrist. I've dreamed of the day that I could cure the world of anxiety or schizophrenia or ADHD. As I saw loved ones wrestle with depression, my passion grew deeper but simpler. Mental disorders are bad and psychiatrists are good. As I researched the field, I would sometimes find anti-psychiatry forums on Reddit or obscure blogs. And as I skimmed the comments, I would systematically dismiss their concerns. As psychiatric patients vulnerably shared their terrible experiences in the psychiatric system, I'd quickly assume that their particular hospital was bad or that their experience was a historical one. If only they had spent more time looking for a good psychiatrist or tried again a few years later, they'd find a cure. And their claims about psychiatry being racist, bogus. Today, no way. Despite my initial dismissal, their stories dug at me. And as I learned more about America's structural racism and health inequities, I was forced to confront how corrupt the system was, how corrupt my own thoughts were. How could I help those struggling from mental disorders if I wasn't even willing to give any credence to their experiences? Finally, I decided to explore criticisms of psychiatry with an open mind. Activist voices, largely outside of the medical establishment, painted for me a new picture of psychiatry that takes inspiration from anti-psychiatry's historical portrait. In their painting, psychiatry is a field filled not with saviors, but with pawns controlled by pharmaceutical companies and industry influences. These influences have reduced psychiatric treatment to an overly simplistic biological model of mental well-being and fostered neglectful mental health service practices. The psychiatric community can no longer avoid confronting the harms it has caused. To stop causing more harm, the medical field must work with community leaders, patients, anti-psychiatry activists, and health equity academics to create reform. Only then will we be able to empower patients in their journey to recovery.